The January 22nd regular meeting of the Clarkston Community Schools Board of Education. If you could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. McLean, if you could please call the roll.
Yes. Mr. Heyer.
Here.
Mrs. McGinnis. Here. Mrs. Egan.
Here.
Mrs. Sivers.
Here.
Mrs. Crane.
Here.
Mrs. Love. Mr. Need.
Here. We have a quorum. Mrs. Love contacted me. Unfortunately, she has had a death in her family and will be unable to attend tonight, and our sympathies and thoughts are with her. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community hearing. There is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in agenda items 3 and 9. Item 2 is approval of the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Motion's made and supported. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 3 is the first opportunity for citizen comment. Again, you are given 2 opportunities to address the board. Under this item, item 3.1, you can request to address the board on any topic on tonight's agenda. Or under item 9, you're welcome to address the board on any topic. When making comments, please state your name and address. Direct your comments here to the board president. Each person may speak for up to 2 minutes. Per established procedures, the board will not respond to questions or interact with the speaker during public comment. If somebody could, please, thank you, Mrs. Mahoney. There is a sign-in sheet at the side where Mrs. Mahoney is telling me no one has signed up under item 3. Okay, and again, any member of the public has the right to address the board under item 9. Item 4, superintendent update. Dr. Ryan.
Thank you, President Need. First of all, to our Clarkston community, I want to give a nod to all of our secondary students and all students in Clarkston schools finishing their first semester. I know for a fact, walking the halls, especially the junior high and high school, that our students have been nose to the grind, doing their best to prepare for exams, especially in light of a couple inclement weather days last week and some altered schedules. They all technically finished up their last exams today. I want to congratulate them on all the hard work and effort they put into that, and I wish them well as they start a brand new second semester tomorrow. So we're there. Secondly, to all of our athletes and our students that are preparing for our musical and all the other wonderful things that we got prepping through that midwinter to get us through the blues of the gray skies, the low sun, and the snowy mornings. Our students are hard at work heating up the school district with lots of, literally 1,001 different activities and things that they're putting both feet into. Community, a little bit of an update because I'm getting some communication from students asking me about tomorrow for school. So for all those students that are showing their governmental wisdom and turning into their local school board meeting this evening right now, although some school districts in central Oakland County have already thrown in the towel, I can tell you really from following the weather and speaking to some meteorologists this afternoon that it really will come down to whether the snow freeze line for rain, freezing rain, hits Clarkston or doesn't, and we'll know that by sometime most likely by the middle of this evening, middle of the night. Unfortunately, will not be, at least right now, seem like an early call, but hang in there. I'm going to do my best. My alarm is already set for 4 a.m. to start trolling the roads of Clarkston with my colleagues in the transportation department to make sure that it's safe and fit to start school. I know that was a big item for many of you who are emailing me right now looking for updates. Additionally, this month, January, is our school board recognition month. And this, as it kind of transitions from my update into the proper agenda, I have to really let our community know and remind them of how much work and how much heart that the individuals you see here this evening that sit to my right and left put into governing Clarkston Community Schools. In many ways, it is a absolute volunteer job. They show up on behalf of their community. They show up because they care about kids. They share their skills, their backgrounds, because they come from many different fields to bring their expertise to our school board table. And they put in countless numbers of hours, days, weekends, trips across the country to advocate for our school district and public education as a whole. They attend state conferences. They're constantly enrolled in classes to improve their boardmanship and their understanding of all the things pertaining to school, from school law to funding to best practices, and helping support everything that we have going on here in school district. So I, as your superintendent, want to call attention, and we've been trying to do it through social media somewhat across this month, but it's absolutely critical for those individuals that step up, to me, that we acknowledge everything they put into it and really take a moment just to thank them and everything they do to make their part in this community as great as it is. Honestly, schools are reflections of their communities, and Clarkston is a prime example of a community that takes tremendous pride in its schools. And I would say by my colleagues up here that put it in every single day, they do to their best of their ability to make sure everything works in a direction to support our staff, our students, our kids, our families, and our community as a whole. And I can tell you from the questions I receive on a daily basis and a weekly basis in preparation for our board meetings and everything else, they care, they're interested, they're engaged. So I feel so very fortunate to be a superintendent in a school district that has that caliber school board, and the individuals to a person I think are the best and the brightest that we have in this community. So I just want to say thank you. And also as a partner this evening, Mr. Nee, and I'll let you advance the agenda, I have Ms. Beth Rogers, who's the president of the CEA, who wanted to also be able to come up and express a couple thoughts. So if you want to officially move the agenda, Mr. President.
Thank you very much for the kind words, Dr. Ryan. And yes, item 5.1, School Board Recognition Month. Mrs. Rogers.
President Need, can you all hear me? And board members, I'm here on behalf of the Clarkston Education Association to say thank you for all that you do as members of the Clarkston Community Schools Board of Education. January is School Board Appreciation Month, and the CEA wants you to know how much we appreciate what you do in guiding district policy, supporting your teachers and staff as we educate the children of our community. You give your time, your talents, and your energy to this board and to our district. This work is truly invaluable, and we appreciate you all so much. In recognition of your commitment to our schools and our community, the CEA will be donating a book in your name to the Learning Commons in each of our school buildings. Again, on behalf of the CEA and all of its members, thank you for all that you do to move CCS forward and to provide our students with a high-quality public education. Thank you. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Rogers. For your kind words and that of Dr. Ryan, we're proud to serve as your Board of Education, and our job is much easier because we do have an outstanding superintendent and administrative staff, as well as an outstanding teaching staff and support staff, so we thank you as well. Item 5.2, a school safety security update. Dr. Ryan.
Thank you. President Need, this evening I have our team that's going to be sharing kind of an update overall and the state of the school district with respect to school safety and security. And this is a critical element, job one, and everything we do. The first thing we need to ensure when our students come to Clarkston schools, including our own children, is their safety before we can be considered the first opening of a book and making sure that they have opportunities to learn. To that end, it's not as simply as having, locks on the doors as it might have been 20 or 30 years ago, or, proper preparedness with, everything that we do with local law enforcement and everything else. Now it's taken kind of an angle. As you see the individuals up this evening, I have Mr. Lucido as our assistant superintendent. He's our overall chair for our safety and security in our district. I also have Ms. Puzio, who specializes in the mental health and the welfare and looking at that element of school safety and as it relates to the safety and welfare of all kids. I have Angela Harrison up here, just nod for our community, representing our technology arm, which is both defensive and proactive, both in terms of providing security of making sure that our networks and all of our devices and our overall information is secure, but also looking at following our students and where they're utilizing district technology to make sure they're kept safe for themselves and their classmates. And then finally, I have Mr. Goodman, who represents our facilities, who everybody knows one of the best in the business, and he's really charged both looking at our current state of physical security within our building, physical plants and campuses, but also charged with making sure we stay ahead with safety and security with our new junior high that we're building, all elements present and future with the facilities. And then again, Mr. Lucido, as the quarterback of that team, really ties it together and occupies also the training and that element of it. But we're going to bring some new ideas to you tonight and kind of give a wraparound presentation of the whole state of affairs. So thank you, Mr. Need.
So, and we're going to start off with Stacy Puzio. We're going to cover our mental health, the things that we've put in place for mental health, our building security updates, all of the training that we've done, and then everything we've done with technology and cybersecurity. And then, as Dr. Ryan shared, we have some areas that we've identified that we want to pursue, and we'd like some direction from the board to take back to our safety committee. So, Ms. Puzio.
All right, good evening. Okay. Oh, thank you. Sorry, it's been a while since I've done this. All right, so good evening. When we look at some of the mental health pieces that we have, there's programming and there's personnel, and so we'll talk through that. The first thing on there is the Comprehensive School Threat Assessment Guidelines. We call that CSTAG. It's one of the top 3 guidelines that are used to help examine the threats and have a process that goes through that. We have our staff trained in terms of all of our administrators, all of our counselors, our social workers, and our psychologists are all trained in the CSTAG guidelines. We've also have Josh LeMay, who is the assistant principal at Clarkston High School, and Jake Schmidt, who's a psychologist at the high school. They've actually gone through additional training so that they can help provide training within our district and to help have some calibration in our district for that. It is about early intervention, and CSTAG has either a transient threat that says it's not serious. It might be something that a kiddo says something that is not appropriate and they need to learn from that. Or it's substantive. It's a threat that does pose continuous risk to somebody else, and so there's something that we need to do with that. And so there is an impact on student discipline. It may be what are some of the interventions that need to take place before a student can come back, or is it appropriate even for that student to come back? And so those are some of the things that help us to go through that. It is multifaceted. It is not ever any one person who is doing this. It is a team at each building who works together to do the interviews, do the examination. Our liaisons are involved either directly in that they might be the ones, helping to do some of the interviews, or consulting, because if the team comes together and says, all right, we're wondering about this, they'll connect with the liaison. So we have a very close partnership with that. We also have a district threat assessment review team who's examining what are the things that we can put into place, what are the things to be aware of across the district, what are the systems that we need to put into place. And so this is something that is continuously evolving, and we're learning and we're growing, and it's something that we are working in partnership together. Some of the additional mental health supports and positions that we have been putting into place. The first thing is counselors. The American School Counselor Association recommends that we have 250 students to every 1 counselor. We have now, with the addition of a counselor at the junior high and the middle school, the ratio is about 252 to 1. And at the high school, the additional counselor made that 260 to 1. So there are very few districts in Oakland County who can say the same in terms of the ratios, and that's something that we're very proud of. To have that space, have that both proactive as well as to be able to be responsive to the needs of students. For social worker, we have added a general ed social worker at the high school, and that person works closely with the other social workers as well as the counselor, and works with the break room and helping to guide lessons for students. You'll recall it's been, I think, about 8 or 9 years, maybe even, that we have also had full-time social workers at the elementary level, which was a move because sometimes there are even still some districts that they're sharing buildings and they only are there part-time. While we might have people who are sharing, there's always somebody as a social worker in the buildings. Behavior interventionists. This year we implemented the positive behavior interventionists at the middle school and the junior high. They work again closely with administration, with counselors, and we're really working with that restorative practice and what is the work that they can do to help connect with students. We also have the student support coach at Renaissance High School. She has been there for a couple of years. And we do have what we call SEL interventionists at Andersonville, Pine Knob, and North Sash. And again, they work collaboratively with the social worker, with the counselors, the principal, in really providing supports for students to give them the skills that they need to interact with one another, to be able to process through things on their own. Break rooms, that is more of a secondary thing. In our classrooms at the elementary level, we might have safe spots or, spot that students may take a break. But at the secondary building, it depends on the building of what that looks like, but it's a space for students that if they need to have a break, they need to take a deep breath. Sometimes they just need a rest. Sometimes they need, though, to have additional skills to be able to manage through things, and so we have our counselors and social workers who are connected with that room as well. This last one is Handle with Care. It is a program that is moving to go statewide. There's multiple counties in the district who do this, and Oakland County is just starting this. So Brandon and Huron Valley is currently piloting this work, and it's a connection with law enforcement. So if something happens that a student experiences or witnesses some kind of an event that may be traumatic that's outside of school, the law enforcement would then ask the student what is their name, what is the school that they go to, and they then will report to us in an email, Handle with Care. So we don't know what the situation is, and that's not what we're there for, but to recognize and understand that something may have happened in a child's home allows us to know that there might be something if a student is acting out or something. Maybe they're falling asleep a lot, maybe they're coming to school hungry. There might be something else that's happening, and that might not be something that they themselves are abused or anything like that. It may be that they witnessed something, witnessed an accident, they lost a family member, whatever that might be, that there might be something that they just need support. It is something that is very strongly recommended that it's trauma informed. And so when I contacted Oakland County about this, they're like, oh, well, you have to be trauma informed. I'm like, all right, let me tell you, we're trauma informed. We've done a lot of work there. So that is something that we are excited. It's going to start in the next couple of weeks. Actually, we're just in the process of doing the behind the scenes work to have that happen and setting up the systems in order to have the contacts of who's going to do that, but also be very mindful about who receives that information so that we protect the child and the needs of the child. The next part is Gaggle, and we've talked about this, is a system that alerts us if a student, perhaps in an email or a chat or in Google Docs, is writing something that seems to be disturbing, that might be an indication of harm to self or harm to others or something else that might be happening. We get this Gaggle report, we get this notification, and it gives us information that allows us to know that there's something questionable that you might want to check into, or it might be a possible student situation that we really need to examine. There are times that we've had to include police into that because there is some indication that a child is indicating that they are being hurt or that they themselves are at harm or of themselves. And so that is work that we're doing with that. TSIP is Traumatic Event Crisis Intervention Plans. It is something that is a plan that we can help put into place at the end once a traumatic event has happened. So if we've lost a student, we've lost a staff member, there's been something that's happened, it's being able to have in place what are some of the things we need to think about, because when you can imagine when you're in that situation, there's a lot happening and there's a lot that you're emotionally connected to, but there's a lot of things that very logically we have to do, and it's kind of hard to do both, to manage both the emotional and the logical piece of it. And it's helpful to have those plans in place. What happens if we lose a student? What's the notification? What is the communication out to within the building, outside of the building? What is the support that happens? How can we help provide information for our staff? What's the support we provide for our staff? A lot of different things that we need to have in place, and it helps us to be able to think through that. It helps to have, what are some ideas of letters that could go out, so it's not fresh trying to figure out, what else do we have to think about? It's allowing a space for that. The restorative practice work that we have been engaged in, this is our third year. We started at the secondary level and have grown it into the elementary. It's really about building community and having strong relationships, and it allows individuals who have perhaps caused harm, it helps them to make amends, and it's a process for doing that. The work is really even growing. It's one of our 4 initiatives at the secondary level that we're really engaging a lot of teachers of how do we build that community and the strong relationships within classrooms, both academically to make connections to that as well as to them as individuals. Some of the partnerships that we have is Easter Seals. As you know, that we have a counselor in all of our secondary buildings to provide additional supports for our students who need that. It's also a good partnership when there's different things that are happening that we can contact them and say, we have this situation, can you help us through this? And we also have our elementary social workers who will even make referrals for support through Easter Seals. Youth assistance, Clarkston area youth assistance, we work closely with Lauren Kloss in what are the processes and the supports that might be needed to provide additional supports for students and their families. And then New Oakland is a partnership that we have a direct contact with a person. We contact her if there's something that is happening that we need support, a student is at risk of harm for themselves, where can we take them? What is the right process? What do we do? And she's a phenomenal support for us. And we work to then get release of information so that she can continue to keep us updated of where things are at and how can we support the student and their families with that. Proactive supports are built into the curriculum, whether it's part of elementary and its second steps, or it's Leader in Me and the work that they're doing and how do we be proactive, or it could be a part of Pause, Wolf Time, or Community Forum that is providing what are some of the skills to be able to work with one another, to recognize some of the things that we need to do to help ourselves if we're feeling anxious or if there's something that we need to do. Taking those deep breaths, what are some of the steps that we can do? Those are some of the proactive supports that are built into curriculum. And then the last thing is just that updated mandatory reporting guidelines. We recognize that as mandated reporters, that if there's something that we are suspicious of a child abuse or neglect, that we have to be the ones to report that and follow up in that process.
Good evening. So I'm going to speak more to the physical plant and site and some of the improvements that we've made over several years and what we're currently doing now. Going back to the 2016 bond, a big presence of that of safety and security, and we did our secure entrances, focusing on 3 layers of security, being the exterior is one, the vestibule driving our visitors into the office, before being vetted if they go into released into the building. That would be the second layer of security, and then the third layer is the classroom doors. A lot of that also in secure entrance was to get a better view of the parking lots so that our office staff could see what's going on outside, any noticeable things that just seem out of place, they have a good view of it. And then security cameras were in there too, to really see the site. Also, it's both indoors and outdoors, but also separation of student and parent drop-off traffic to make that safer. Night locks and new locks. So night lock is a secondary barricade device. You've, I'm sure, seen them. Those are for all of our classroom doors, and that's a device that it can be put on, again, as a secondary device. The door is the first line of security. Again, keeping that locked is their third ring. Part of what you approved back in November, it was the HVAC projects for the elementaries, but we also had door hardware on there, and we're starting as soon as spring break at buildings where we're going to change the door hardware to classrooms. We'll have a quick release, and it will have an indicator that the door is locked or unlocked, so teachers can don't have to fumble for their keys. We don't have to keep a magnet in the door with the door locked. It will just be they can shut the door and they can quickly lock the door. New doors at the CHS Clarkston High School main entrance. So that school is now 25, 26 years old. And so the front entries has a lot of traffic, and they're getting tired. And what we went out and you approved in November was school guard glass, which is a bulletproof glass, and we're replacing all those doors with heavy-duty hardware and the bulletproof glass. A camera audit. Basically, we regularly audit our cameras, but we recently did a survey with our principals and just asked them to really review their school. Do they have any areas that we could improve? And we're going to do that as part of some of the new projects that we have coming in line. 2 years ago at least, and then over the summer we received more additional radios. So we have walkie-talkies where we used to be whatever Best Buy had or Amazon, and there was different radios throughout the school district. Now we're on one radio system, and they have really good coverage. We can talk to the school bus, they're on the bus repeater, but we can have schools can talk to their colleagues at other schools within the district. That's been a big improvement. Building audits, we've had, most recently we had an audit of the new junior high as we've been designing it from a security perspective. We also had SEC come through and audit all our buildings. Physical walkthrough, just looking for any kind of safety hazard that could be out on the site, as far as, and then right into the buildings. So we continue to do that. Security safety film, you recently approved that, and we have started installation over the break, and again, that project we're continuing on and hope to be completed by mid-March. And what that is the film, safety film that's on the glass of our entry doors and certain other doors within the school. The other is, it's a brand name night lock, but it's a security shade. We've ordered those for all the buildings. They're being kind of custom made for us right now because we have several different window sizes. So we had to measure every single window and then send in, get our quotes, so forth. But we did receive the high school. The high school is now installed, and these are just quick release shades to block out in the instance there would be an emergency, so they can close, block off the light, the window in their door or the door frame next to the door. Security mapping. So one of the grants we recently had offered was, I can say, a 97 something security mapping grant. But what this mapping is really taking our floor plans and our sites of every school, and we're putting critical information. All of our exterior doors are numbered. Those numbers are helpful for police and fire if we have an emergency. You know, we need an ambulance at door 12. And we have within that where our AEDs, the defibrillators, are in the buildings, where our roof access points are, our gas, where the gas enters the school, or the main electric or the water. All these are on a map that we're working on that will be available to police and fire in their cars. So when they're called, they can pull up the school map and they can see all this critical safety information. Roof access points to just various safety items that will make things quicker as they're en route. And group announcements and after evening events. One of the things that through our building audits were a lot of good things that we do it during the day, we could improve at night when we don't have our office staff in general. But in big events, like a basketball game, just the proper announcements are being made to remind people where your exits are and safety precautions while you're at the school. Thank you.
So the training that we've done around safety and active shooter, we've had the Alice online module. Our staff has been doing that for a number of years now. We have done simulation training also with all of our staff. We've had the Oakland County Sheriff come in and we've split up into groups across our district. We did not do that last school year, but the year prior we had all of Oakland County Sheriff in, and now we've started to train our teachers as part of our new orientation process. So the Oakland County Sheriff comes in our new teacher orientation and conducts live simulations, and then all of our staff does the online module as part of the hire. And so all of our staff is currently trained in Alice. That training was actually due last Friday, so we should be fairly good in our compliance. The student training, we do Alice age appropriate per grade level in all of our buildings during Safety Week twice a year. Stop the Bleed training, we've done that twice now. It's a partnership with St. Joseph Mercy Oakland, and they come in and we've gone through every one of our buildings twice now, where all of our staff do a return demonstration on how to put a tourniquet on a mannequin, as well as stuff a wound that would be equivalent to a gunshot. All of our staff, too, as part of our trainings, we've had each one of them go around and do an overhead announcement, because our phone is able to be used as a speaker to do building-wide announcements, and they've all been practice doing that. The other thing we've done is there's online resources for parents under our safety page on the district website. So those are the things that we've done to train our staff. We have stuck with Alice. We've maintained our certification, but one of the things we're looking at is to seeing what kind of other resources are out there and available for training.
Hi, so for cybersecurity, several years ago, there have been several cybersecurity incidents at school districts across Michigan. I think Walled Lake was hit, Jackson County was hit with some cybersecurity incidents, and CETSEG, who is our insurance company, has come in and kind of given parameters for school districts to maintain a cybersecurity rider that we keep in case of a cybersecurity incident, because recovering from these incidents can be very expensive. So Oakland Schools did a network penetration testing thing that they did with all of the school districts in Oakland County. And so a company comes in and they test your network to see, if you have any vulnerabilities, if you have any servers that need security updates. It does kind of this whole audit of trying to get into your network. And then we got probably a 30-page report, and there were a handful of things that we needed to fix, which we did. So that was a one-time thing. It was no cost to us from Oakland Schools, and we are looking at continuing this testing so that we can make sure that we stay on top of everything. The InfoSec phishing and email training is a company that we partnered with. This was part of the requirements from CETSEG that we had to implement this phishing training for staff. So this company that we partnered with sends out an email that looks like an official email to try to get a staff to click a link and then provide personal information or something like that. So it almost sounds like it's like we're trying to get you, but what it really is doing is it's trying to make staff be suspicious. Be suspicious of anything that is asking for your personal information. Be suspicious of anything that's asking you for your credentials to log into your Google account. And it's working. I get reports on this, and our numbers have gone way down of phishing incidents. The two-factor authentication, we have implemented to teachers. We're working to implement this to the rest of the staff. School districts can be a little bit tricky because you have everyone from subs to bus drivers, food service staff, building aides, teachers, and everyone's at a different level of technology readiness for two-factor authentication, but we are working through getting that implemented to everyone. Securely Yours network monitoring is another Oakland Schools service that they offered. So we set up a server on our end, a virtual server, and the company Securely Yours put a program on there, and they monitor our network logs to see if there's any incidents, that anything that looks strange, anything that looks like, you know, we might be under attack, or anything that just doesn't look right. They monitor those, and that way they can let us know if they see something happening. The air gap backup server. So we implemented this a couple years ago, and then it did become a recommendation from SETSEG. So when you take your backups, you know, they're on your server, on hard drives, but the first line of action for a cybersecurity attack is a cybersecurity criminal will attack your backups because they don't want you to be able to recover from the incident that they're trying to do. So they attack your backups, and all of your backups are online, they're on the network, right? So the air gap server takes a copy of those backups, and then it disconnects from the network so that if a cybersecurity incident happened, then you would still be able to access those backups. This is also important, not just for cybersecurity, but if there was a catastrophic incident at the server room at the high school. You know, if we lost all of our servers, you know, from a fire or a flood or anything like that, the air gap server would help us recover quickly from an attack or a catastrophic incident.
So this school year, we formed a steering committee. These are the members, myself as well as my colleagues who are up here, Dr. Ryan. We have two board members, Steve Heyer and Jacqueline Sivers are on that. And then we also have representation from the Oakland County Sheriff's Office and Independence Fire. And what we're kind of evaluating and some of the work that our safety committee's doing, we talked about this as our steering committee and now wanted to come in front of the Board of Education to kind of get some direction. Since the Oxford report has come out, and also we had, as Wes pointed out, we had SEC come through and do an audit of all of our buildings. But the things that we're looking to do is renew our security company audit. It's been a few years, and there's things that have been learned through the Oxford report. So we're looking potentially of having them come back out. We're in the process. We actually had a meeting today just to review our threat assessment. We're looking at calibration and retraining of our staff to make sure we're staying current with that. We're also looking, as I mentioned, with the training process review, like looking at Alice versus some of the other things that are out there and recommended by the Oakland County Sheriff. But the three big things that are, and there's, needs to have funding attached with it, is since the Oxford shooting, a lot of school districts learned and changed protocols, and we certainly have since that, and what we learned from that. We added the third liaison. And right now, our liaisons, we have one at the high school and one at the junior high, and they don't leave. If they take a day off, they're replaced. If they have to go out for lunch or run an errand or have a family emergency, they are replaced during the school day. Our third liaison supports the middle school and all of our elementary buildings. She is stretched thin. There's a lot going on, and they're part of our threat assessment process and our daily operations. So we do feel that if we did add a fourth liaison, there's plenty of work to keep them busy, and we do feel it would keep our school district safer. But we've also evaluated, part of the SEC has they have now have a process where they're doing trainings, and they're also providing safety directors to school districts. So Troy has gone in this direction, and I know one of the big pushes for that is so you don't have 4 people up here talking about the different specialties and one person is owning it and potentially finding problems that we don't even know we have currently. So that is part of that. And then another thing that we have gotten quotes from and evaluated is there is companies out there that are providing armed security guards to schools. There's a number of school districts that have armed security guards in all of their buildings as part of their front office staff. So that is something that we have evaluated as well and gotten some quotes on. But those are the things that we're working on, and as part of we have a smaller safety committee, a little smaller than our steering committee, comprised of my colleagues behind me, and as well as Gary Call from the high school and Jody Yellowshan from Pine Knob Elementary, and Alex Knopp is our liaison rep that is on that. So after tonight, we'd like to get that team together and kind of start pursuing and moving forward with one of these recommendations or more if it's the board's direction. Dr. Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Lucido, and I want to thank our entire team for their presentation this evening. And just I wanted, as your superintendent, to give you a sense of kind of a raw end of direct information from the team here. And I also wanted, when it came to the evaluations recommendations, give our board an opportunity to be able to weigh in and have a discussion publicly. But I also wanted to add at least my leanings so far in listening and looking at these recommendations. I think absolutely, having another audit is, to me, I would say non-negotiable. I don't think anybody on our board will have any issue of it. Especially as it goes along with our safety protocols, threat assessments, and our training process review. But those last 3 recommendations, I'm definitely looking for additional feedback. In light of what we've had with our 3 liaisons and the increased police support, I feel like it has added an additional degree of safety in several dimensions. One obviously being the physical presence, but I think also their involvement in the school culture and their understanding of the school process is extremely important. And I think that I would very much appreciate our Board of Education supporting me to pursue that, again, with your input. As far as evaluating the hiring a safety director, initially I was concerned about looking at an outsider coming in, understanding that you have 4 individuals, as Mr. Lucido said, giving their combined expertise, but they all have intimate knowledge of the processes and how school operates. After listening and getting some additional information in regards to the potential for a safety director, especially if they are attached to an outside security firm, I've kind of revised and grown my opinion in regards to a safety director as potentially looked at more as a point person of an entire string of new resources that the school district doesn't have on a daily basis. So we would have both, an individual, if we could find the right individual, help the command and control and integration and unifying of all the different processes of school safety. As you can see, it's large here, but also be kind of the point person from a company or an entity that specializes just in this to bring their resources, both in times when we're evaluating our systems and experiencing a crisis, to be able to, whether it's technology or threat assessment, to be able to have a second entity to be able to back up some of the thinking that goes on with the staff of Clarkston Schools. I don't think it's hard to imagine you go wrong there. Concerns that I'd bring with that were just along the lines of actually finding the right individual that could occupy and serve as this conduit, because I feel like if you have the wrong individual, we would be less safe. Let that hang in the air. Have the right individual, right support system, definitely an enhancement. And also just looking at the day-to-day utility of that individual working within our systems, I think we would need to evaluate the potential of how they exist in either supporting direct security threats or some other capacity, because obviously, it's a big job assessing all the different nooks and crannies and processes of Clarkston Schools. But once that's done, my question for the taxpayers is always, what next? How can we best utilize this individual? So I think those 2, I think, are definitely in my recommendation. But I am very open to take feedback and direction from our Board of Education as your superintendent, because I am your superintendent. Finally, the evaluation use of armed and unarmed security officers. This one I'm the least excited about in terms of, I think, the potential. One is when you look at an elementary school with an armed individual in it, at the door, I don't know if it says the right message right now within what we have in terms of the threats that we experience day to day. Not saying it's not a good idea, just I don't have the same confidence that I do in our resource officers, their training, their attachment, and it's not just a one and done. They are constantly being updated and integrated into a larger police force in Oakland County. I feel a certain degree of confidence just in that sometimes, again, just have not heard unilaterally that, the talent of matching schools and armed and unarmed security rises to the standard to make people maybe feel more safe than the substantive part. Again, willing to absolutely take, and the team here, feedback from our board, but I just wanted to give you where I was kind of hot and where I was a little bit less hot in terms of immediate recommendations for attempting to implement. Finally, I would say that, based on the feedback tonight, it would be my direction as your superintendent to make haste in terms of all the areas that we can actualize these different areas that the board feels comfortable and strongly in terms of supporting the administration and pursuing, and that my commitment and the commitment of our team here to bring reality to all those elements that we feel like need to be enhanced as part of our overall safety and security of our school district. So thank you, Mr. Need, or President Need.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Thank you, Mr. Lucido. Thanks to your team. It was very informative and thorough presentation, as we would expect from you folks. And thank you to Mr. Heyer and Ms. Sivers. They're our board representatives on the Safety and Security Committee. So at this time, we'll open it up to the board. Any questions for the Safety and Security team, or any comments you wish to make on the recommendations that you've heard tonight?
I'll comment.
Ms. Sivers.
Okay, thank you. First of all, just to highlight the importance and the expediency of, it's really what you said earlier in the meeting, Dr. Ryan, is that education can't happen unless in reality our students are safe and our teachers are safe, but they also feel safe. It's not just the practical safety aspects that are put in place, but also that not only are parents feeling safe to send their kids to school, but the kids have that internal confidence that they are safe at school. With that being said, I am 100% in line with your priorities as those are outlined in terms of, I think the audit is a given and should be done as soon as we can do that. Hopefully referencing their prior audit and then giving us a report on the strengths, the weaknesses, but also the growths that we've experienced in between the two audits. I'm least excited about the armed security officers. I hate to think of a world that elementary school, that kindergartners are walking in and seeing what looks like an armed security guard. I know that there's talented individuals out there. However, I would ask that the board not push that to the side, but not prioritize that when it comes to, because everything has a cost associated with it, right? I would ask that we prioritize the safety director. And the reason that I would ask that we prioritize the safety director is because if we do find that right person, I would hope that we can also lean in on their opinion and experience on how to go forward on the other two recommendations. So if we have the right person that we feel confident is going to make our schools safer, and they ask us to add a fourth SRO or on board with us adding a fourth SRO, I would think that that would give the board also an additional confidence in going forward, leaning into their expertise. So I would ask that we prioritize that, but I'm always on board with adding local law enforcement to our school district. I would also highlight that SROs, yes, they are armed, and yes, they are secure officials at our schools, but they add far more value in their community involvement, their knowledge with the students, and also being a safe space for both teachers, students, and families. And it's knowledge that makes our schools safe when it comes to law enforcement. It's law enforcement's knowledge with handle with care, with our mental health professionals that are embedded in our school. It's that cumulative knowledge that they then partner with their enforcement background that make our schools safer, with SROs in particular. So I would just ask that we highlight those two recommendations the armed security officers, I would need a lot of research to back up that they are an additive. There is a point in security where if it's too much security, people start feeling unsafe. So I would ask that we not swing the pendulum that way by any means. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Mrs. McGinnis.
So I agree with what Jacqueline's outlined there. One of the things that I like about the additional liaison is the relationship building the liaison brings to the students and the community. I also see it as a preventative position that ultimately aids not only our community but our Oakland County Sheriff Department. I think also it's a significant other adult that's in the classroom or accessible to our students to elevate to our students that there is a law enforcement, I'm trying to find the words I really want to use here, that there's a person of status that our students can look up and say, this person is here for me, is here to protect me. But I also think part of what Jacqueline was bringing up is about the climate of the school building. And depending on how far you swing that pendulum, we can create an environment where everybody thinks they're not so safe because so many mechanisms are in place. So one of the things I would like to see the committee consider is a survey at some point in time to judge the climate. One of the things I see that's not up there, and I understand this is a recommendation, is talk that's going around our nation of arming our teachers. I'm not pro or for it. I'm not trying to say that I have a position about it. But I'd like to know from our teachers' standpoint, how safe do they feel? And how are these mechanisms that we have in place, or how are these recommendations making them feel more safe or less safe if we feel we need to add additional layers of safety? I think what's there is adequate. It's not making me feel less safe for our school. I would agree with Jacqueline that I'm not real interested in having armed security guards in our building. I think as kids walk in the building and they think they're still growing up, they're still trying to just, be kids. And we all know what our kids know what to do the minute they hear a very unusual popping sound is things that none of us had to experience as we went to school. So I fully agree that we have to be mindful of how far we swing the pendulum as to how tight our system is. And I agree with the recommendations except for the armed security guards. I guess I would like to have a survey to see if we really feel we need a director of safety, or if we have a staff member who has the capacity that could gain that knowledge or has that knowledge and could take on that position along with that. Because I just wonder, I guess I hate to think that there's not enough work for them. I mean, I'd like to think that there's not enough work for them. Maybe that's really even better said. So I'm not so sure just yet that I feel like we need a director of safety just yet.
Thank you, Mrs. McGinnis. Mrs. Crane?
Yeah, just quickly, because I just am reiterating a lot of what Mrs. Sivers and Mrs. McGinnis said. Just looking at the recommendations and assuming, like Mrs. Sivers said, that the audit is a given, I think that one is, I think we have to do. I always think that we should do another SRO, especially when somebody said that the one was stretched thin, and I felt like she was stretched thin long before that was even brought up. 7 elementary schools and a middle school is a lot, and you can't build the connections that our junior high and high school SROs have done. So I've always thought we needed at least one more SRO. I think that would be great. I agree more with you, Mrs. McGinnis, about the safety director. I'd like to see some more research. I feel like it's not a full-time forever job. At least I hope it's not a full-time forever job. And maybe we could utilize a different staff member to kind of be point person for a year or two and then see where it goes from there. The idea of an armed security officer, I don't like. I'd like to see research that would convince me that that's the right move, because right now my gut instinct is that it's not, for all the reasons that have already been stated. So those are my quick thoughts.
Thank you, Mrs. Crane.
I would just add in support.
Mrs. Egan, sure.
Thank you. I'm in agreement with a lot of what was said. I also think before we do anything, let's get that audit done and take a look at that. But something perhaps we would want to consider, instead of hiring a safety director, perhaps there's a consulting firm that specializes on this, can actually be very focused on building a strategy for safety in our district, where we could, to your point, it's not a full-time, long-term position, but then we have a team in place that can implement this, and then maybe, just like we review our strategic plan and we review our finances on a regular basis, it's something that maybe the consultant can do check-ins with us, like maybe twice a year or so. I mean, it would be interesting to see what consulting is available out there before we make the commitment of just saying, well, maybe we need to hire someone. I don't know that we really need a full-time employee to be doing that yet. So I just think considering the consulting route also is probably a value, but let's do the audit first.
Anybody else?
Can I say something in response?
Can I first of all, since I heard all the way around, is that I appreciate the feedback. I would like an opportunity to show where the potential of a safety director would fit in via either a consulting firm and or and I didn't really expand my ideas on it because I feel like we could, again, the right person being critical, but then the potential that the individual is from a firm that is kind of the point person of a whole lot of other resources that they bring in the school district, and also the potential, depending on the time utilization, that I would like to pursue the opportunity of potentially either sharing that individual with another school district, or have that individual, if they are with a law enforcement background at a high caliber, occupy some of the, actual coverage of like our middle school, which does not have a full-time liaison. So I would take it, the feedback I feel like I did receive at the board is that the only one I was really had a cold response to so far is the evaluation for the armed and unarmed security officers, but I would like and plan to pursue the other ones, at least in essence, to be able to bring back a proposal to the board that makes sense. And I feel like that if we do have the right individual and firm that represents the safety director, that then we could make it, as long as we're utilizing this person at 100% for our school district and for our taxpayers, that would be palatable to the board. So that's kind of the direction I'm going to row in, and then the team will bring you back more information. So besides that, though, again, I yield to Ms. Cybers to be able to fill in.
Yeah, Ms. Cybers.
I just want to highlight with the safety director that there's 4, let's call them experts in their fields, and then there's like the captain of the ship. And if the feedback is about the position, I would just ask that the board recognize that there's no finish line when it comes to school safety. There's no, we are now a safe school, so now we can step back. It is a long-term position. It is ever evolving. Technology is only going to get more horrible to deal with in terms of AI and everything that's coming in. And this individual, I would hope, with Dr. Ryan's vetting, they would be on top of the ever-changing school safety environment and have that overarching point of view. So I do see it as an important position. I do see it as a long-term position. I do see it as somebody that works with the team, but it's also so that these 4 can focus on their expertise and their knowledge areas, but also be able to rely on somebody to have like that accumulated knowledge and to have that point person. So I love your ideas, Dr. Ryan. I'm excited to see all of them. I just hope that we can get to the place where it is an actual role in your administration and not somebody that just consults with us.
Okay.
Okay, more to come then. Thank you for your feedback.
No problem. So what I hear, I think there's unanimity on the audit. Everybody also believes that we need the 4th liaison officer. The safety director is certainly an idea worth exploring. We need to see the options beyond full-time employee, consultant, etc. And at this point, I'm not sure that the idea of the armed and unarmed security officers probably should be a low priority, but the other three, I believe, we need to work on.
Loud and clear.
Fair? Okay, thank you, everybody. Moving on to our action items. Item 6.1, approval of personnel changes. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the personnel changes as listed on the attached sheets.
Support.
Motion made and supported. Any discussion or any questions for Mr. Lucido? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 6.2, approval of Chromebook purchases. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the purchase of 2,500 Chromebooks to Presidio in the amount of $790,750, funded by E-rate directly to Presidio.
Support.
Motion made and supported. I don't know how to pronounce it either.
Presidio.
Presidio, I'm not sure. Mrs. Harrison is here. If there are any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 6.3, approval of the school bus purchase. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approve the bid to purchase 14 new school buses from Hoekstra Transportation in the amount of $2,012,318 as presented.
Support.
Motion made and supported. Mr. Goodman is here to answer any questions. Are there any questions for Mr. Goodman or any comments?
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely. Ms. Sivers.
Thank you. Mr. Goodman, can you just, as I like to say, put on the record why we have to make this decision, but also to ensure the public at large that it's not going to affect routes with the less buses being purchased?
Okay, yes. So we call this a purchase agreement. It's like a lease. So we have a fleet of a portion of our buses that are coming due in June. And so this gives authorization tonight for Hoekstra to have those buses built and ready in June or this summer. There's a lot of lead time. When we evaluate each time, we've evaluated our runs to see how many buses. Do we have enough? Do we have too many? And in this situation, we are replacing 17 with 14. Out of those 14, though, the new buses that we're recommending are bigger. We have 2 that are 65 passenger, and then the other 12 are, I don't have my book in front of me, but I think they're 52 passenger. And currently we have 30 passenger buses and 48 passenger buses out of those 17. So what this will allow us, and also these are all special ed buses. We're going to have wheelchair lifts on every bus, and a lot of times we're sending multiple buses out to the same location because we just can't put enough kids in wheelchairs on the bus. So this is more efficient for our transportation department because the buses won't come until summer to replace that. It will be part of our normal summer routing program that will be ready in the fall. So there won't be any changes to routes. There may be changes to routes, but it won't be due to our bus changes this year. The bus changes really should make it more that we can put more kids on the bus and prevent ourselves from going into the same side of town with multiple small buses. And so based on our transportation director and Colleen before she left, this was a big piece that she worked with, so it came with a lot. Garrett's doing a wonderful job, great asset to us, but Colleen had a lot more experience that she brought, and this was an opportunity before she left to really evaluate that. And so between the two of them, that was their recommendation. It would just be more efficient for the department.
And is it fair to say that because there's always a concern that we don't have enough bus drivers, that this also helps cushion those numbers as well?
Yes. So no one's going to lose their job because we always have openings. But certainly 3 less buses would be 3 less drivers. And it's been tough to have drivers. So that gives us an opportunity to do more with less.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 6.4 is the approval of the spring testing proposals for the junior high, high school, and Renaissance. Dr. Ryan, you want to introduce this?
Yeah, I'll have Ms. Mahoney talk about for the changing calendar for our testing proposals for the secondary.
Is this regarding science and social studies?
This is the one where we looked at the schedule for testing. And my apologies, was Mr. Lucido, not Ms. Mahoney. My bad.
I'm sorry, what was the question, Dr. Ryan? I didn't.
Just any highlight to the change in calendar or anything related to testing for this approval?
Yeah, no, I don't have any comments to point out.
Okay, well then may I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the spring testing proposals for Clarkston Junior High School, Clarkston High School, and Renaissance High School, utilizing the new 15 instructional days under 21F as presented.
Support.
Any discussion?
Could you just clarify, Dr. Ryan, the write-up was hard to follow, of what days were what, so if you could just go over because we're not using all 15 days. The way our motion was written, it made it seem like we were using 15 days, but it's not close to 15 days. It's just a few days, the way I read it, I think.
Right.
But which, like, we're calling it virtual school day testing, but, like, the kids being tested are in school, is that right?
They are in either full or partial days. I think our effort was back when we were looking at school data to be able to identify the testing cycles to have the greatest efficiencies, but also making it so that we didn't leave any testing days hung out there so that students weren't in a position to where they were kind of given incentive to be able to finish up and leave early. We then tapped into the ability to be able to use our professional learning days that can be used also as testing to be able to expand and alter and improve the testing window in an effort to get greater results from our students. We're not using all of them, but that's the total number of days that you're able to tap into in its entirety.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This gave us some flexibility with the high school, so we don't have to waste a student day. The kids, we can flex. We used to have to have it built in with almost like an extra student day, and this new rule gave us the ability to flex that.
But only the kids being tested will be there that day?
Yes, they have a schedule broken out for that. So now we can count the day even though the students aren't there, so we don't have to find an alternative placement or add time to our calendar.
Previously, we didn't have the percentage of students to be able to show up to count that as a regular day of school. Utilizing this caveat, and Tina Moyles was able to find within the pupil accounting manual, the updated manual, especially as it related to testing. This became more popular in the last 2 years with school districts upon the moving of spring break, which used to be the last week of March and was moved into April in that first full week.
So the kids not in school that day will be using the Google Forms and mentor contacts and all that, so that we can count that as instructional
That's exactly
time.
Right.
Right? Okay.
That's exactly right. I'm sorry if I didn't explain it.
No, I thought I knew what I read, but it just, the way it was written, I just wanted to clarify. I know what we're.
No, that
proving.
is accurate.
And I think this is a great move, and I'm sure we're going to try it and see how it goes and adjust accordingly and try to improve in the future. And as long as we have that sort of flexibility in mind, which I think we do with everything we do, I'm absolutely willing to support this.
Thank you, Mr. Heyer.
Thank you.
President Need?
Mrs. McGinnis.
I'm reading this to say that we're just invoking a section 21F14 to give us the latitude to use up to 15 days in this testing process to test our students. So we're just approving that we're going to invoke that section.
It requires board approval
Yep.
under the state pupil accounting memo to be able to be utilized.
Yep.
Anything else? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. We have one report item. Item 7.1 is our monthly finance report. Actually, our 2 monthly finance reports. So, Mrs. Rogers.
Okay, so tonight's report will be November and December. And this is as of December 31st, 2023. Your budget to actual revenues, we're at 34%. The majority of that collection being the local revenue, but we are starting to receive our state and federal revenue. Once we get past the October 1st and our first October 20th, we start receiving our state and federal revenue. Budget to actual expenditures, 39%. And at this point, with our collections the way they're going, we have our fund equity at 17 million, and we did end our audited June 30th at 25 million. And you can look at your fund equity graph and see it's following prior years, so the trend. So if you have any questions, you were given all the check registers for the last 2 months, ACHs, and our investments for the last couple of months. And so if I have any questions on any of those.
Any questions from Mrs. Rogers? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
We have one set of discussion items. Item 8.1, first reading of a series of policies. These are prompted by some legislative changes to the Public Employment Relations Act. Mrs. McGinnis is the chair of our policy committee, so I would ask her to give us an overview of what's being presented.
President Need, how is your preference for me to go through each one of these, or would you like me to stay high level, and then if anybody has any questions about any one in particular, we can dive into it?
I think at this point a high-level discussion is all that's required, and obviously if any board member has a question on a specific policy, they can bring it up at that time. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to read directly from the Neola package of the overview of these policies. The legislature made a substantial changes to the Public Employment Relations Act, as well as related changes to the revised school code. Neola, who is our legal counsel for policy, conducted a thorough review of the policies related to these issues and areas covered by the legislative changes, and is publishing this special update, which is what these policies are considered within, to allow districts sufficient time to consider them, if appropriate, and implement policy changes prior to February 13th, 2024, which is the effective date of many of the statutory changes. Again, I can go through each one of them. If any board member has a preference, I'm happy to do that for them.
I think I would also want to just add that Mr. Lucido had reviewed these policies, and they are consistent with his role in terms of our collective bargaining process.
Let me, if I may, I'll just pick and choose a few of them here. Policy 0122, board powers. The topics within this are no longer prohibited. Subjects have been deleted from that policy per these changes that were signed into law by the governor. Policy 1420, school administrators evaluation. The appropriate revisions to this policy were made due to the administrator's evaluation changes. And policy relates to staff reductions and recalls, which are no longer a prohibited subject of bargaining. Policy 3142, probationary teachers. The new law changes the rating system effective July 1st, 2024. intern created the need to revise the probationary teacher policy to accurately reflect the new rating system. 3220, professional staff evaluation. 2 bills were signed into law by the governor that dramatically changed the evaluation system effective July 1st. Those changes are noted in that policy. 3120, employment of professional staff. The changes per PERA removed the issue of hiring after a staffing or program reduction from the list of prohibited subjects in bargaining. Staff discipline, 3139. Teacher discipline and discharge is no longer a prohibited subject of bargaining, and the changes are reflected in that policy. 3130, assignment and transfer. Teacher placement and its impact on individuals of the unit is no longer a prohibited subject. Again, those updates were made to that policy. Vacancies, 3132. Decisions about hiring after a staffing or program reduction or personnel determinations resulting in the elimination of a position is no longer a prohibited subject of bargaining. Those policy updates made to that policy. And 3140, termination reassignment, is already referenced at the negotiated collective bargaining agreement and Teacher Tenure Act and individual contracts as governing these decisions, and therefore the policy was changed to become into compliance.
Thank you, Mrs. McGinnis. Just one note, policy 3120 was removed from tonight's agenda because it was determined it was not necessary to update that, so.
So what I would suggest, if anybody doesn't denote that they see something that they would like to question right now, if they could please direct any questions to President Need before we review these for a second approval, I'd greatly appreciate that.
And again, the effective date of these legislative changes is February 13th, so we do need to bring this back to the board at the February 12th meeting to meet that deadline. So if anyone has any concerns or issues with the policies or the options that were chosen, please let me know as soon as possible so we can get those to the policy committee, Mrs. McGinnis and Ms. Sivers, and then they can review those if necessary. Any other questions or comments at this point? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. McGinnis. Thank you, Ms. Sivers. Item 9, this is the second opportunity for citizens to address the board. You are welcome to address the board on any topic. Is there anyone? Good evening.
Hi, I'm Erica Gillette. Did you need my address? I used to be a policy back in the day.
At least your street address, please.
Okay.
Or at least the street you're on, please.
Okay. Peaceful Valley, Clarkston, Michigan, 48348.
You have about 2 minutes to address the board.
Ms. Shacia, can you help her with the microphone just so we can hear her better?
You're working now? Okay. Perfect. I did not make a speech today, but I did want to speak on security, as I've talked to Mrs. Sivers and Mrs. Love previously about security. It is my understanding that Clarkston Schools currently has a 1 to 2,000 ratio when it comes to liaison officers to student body. This seems a little bit high compared to other schools in the area. And I just wanted to voice that I would be in complete approval of doing an audit on having another liaison officer, at least one more, maybe two. depending on the cost to the taxpayers. Also, my children go to Springfield Plains Elementary. Just because I'm boots on the ground, I thought I would voice that during pickup and drop-off, I would personally like to see more adults outside, personnel outside. Sometimes children are dropped off in the beginning of the school morning, and there's hardly any adults out, and that's not to say anything about personnel. They're doing their best, but just want to voice that. Also, the liaisons that we do have coming and going, they're usually during the mornings, and I would like to see them also sporadic in the afternoons as well. And also, as far as the security cameras, I agree on the audit because I would like to see potentially more resolution of the video cameras. And that's it.
Great, thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. Item 10.1, information items. Our next regular Board of Education meeting is Monday, February 12th at 7 p.m. Item 11 is our closed session. May I have a motion to go into closed session for the purposes of collective bargaining negotiation discussion?
I move that the Board of Education goes into closed session for purposes of contract negotiations.
Support.
Motion made and supported. Mrs. McLean, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Crane,
Yes.
Mrs. Egan,
Yes.
Mr. Heyer,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinnis,
Yes.
Mrs. Love, Mrs. Sivers,
Yes.
Mr. Need.
Yes, motion carried. We will go to closed session. When we return to open session, it will be for the sole purpose of adjournment. So at this point, we will recess to our closed session.